I've recreated every single set from Squid Game in real life, and whichever one of these 456 people survives the longest wins 456 grand. Congratulations on winning. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. You have 7 days to win $10,000. And obviously, massive shout out to the creator of Squid Game. We took huge inspiration from the show, and I genuinely appreciate you.
Hello everyone, once again from the Kingdom of Cambodia. You guys who've subscribed to me over the last couple months know I was actually in Cambodia in October and November. I've moved on from Thailand and here I am. But before we go into the video, please let me know how this sounds. I'm actually in a way more rural part of Cambodia this time. I can personally hear loads of bugs outside. You can hear the cars pass because it's so quiet and stuff. And I'm just trying to keep my voice down a bit more because I'm aware of probably how loud I sound. Now, moving on from that, who could have predicted that a game show based on a dystopian game show that has also a massive criticism of capitalism could turn out very wrong? Well, it turns out that Netflix are developing their very own real life Squid Game, apart from people don't die. But that doesn't mean they haven't been suffering, because as we're going to get into in this video, the people on the set of the real life Squid Game have actually had to endure pretty brutal conditions in the pursuit of a 4.5 million, I think, pound or dollar prize. And of course, Netflix even making a real life Squid Game in the first place, completely misses the point of the real show and completely undermines the point of the real show. But they're not the only one. We're going to talk about the Mr. Beast Squid Game thing a bit, because you guys will know I love Mr. Beast so much. I think he should be president. I think he's an amazing guy. So I just want to talk about that a little bit, and it's a nice link to the two videos I did make last week as well. And I just want to talk about game shows and the exploitation of people's economic conditions, because this is of course a conversation that's been going on a long time, but it's also a conversation I spoke about on my video on Thursday, where Mr. Beast had his own game show and then proceeded to show where the winner actually lived and showed that they had a rundown car before telling them that they were so happy they won. Now, in this case, it was just Mr. Beast trying to make himself look better and look more charitable. But there honestly is a big conversation to be had about how game shows in general just exploit people's desperation. So we're going to talk about all of this in relation to the real life Squid Game, which I think is coming out this year, and we're just going to read this exclusive Variety report where they actually interviewed two people who participated in the game show, and they described how it was a terrible experience. Now, before we go any further, please like the video, leave your thoughts about the real life Squid Game down in the comments, and also follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. Instagram is where I'm posting about my travels around Southeast Asia in places like Cambodia and Thailand. So if you care about any of that, go check out the Instagram, check out my highlight reels where I archive everything I've done so far by month. And if you care about that even more, maybe consider checking out the Patreon page where I've posted 2 exclusive travel videos, and also another benefit you get is access to the Discord server and my Nintendo Switch friend code. Also, check out the subreddit and check out my second channel down in the description. So I don't know how many of you guys have watched this, but there's recently been a game show going around called The Traitors. Now, there is a UK version and there's actually a US version. Now, I don't tend to watch game shows, and especially since I'm traveling, pretty much what I like to do with my real alone free time is just play video games, since I'm so busy all the time. But my girlfriend had been watching The Traitors, and as she was watching it, I was doing other things. I was actually watching parts of it too. I like the parts where they had those conferences and they were accusing each other of being traitors. So if you guys don't know, this show is basically a game show set in Scotland. And at the start, 2 people are picked to be traitors, and they are covertly working against the other members of the group. And every day they have a session to try and decide who among them is a traitor. So it's basically all about manipulating each other and being a very, very good liar. But even when we were watching this show, I was saying to my girlfriend, it is a bit messed up. Some of the people on the show were saying why they wanted to win. And of course, there was a great variety of why people wanted, I think, $150,000. One of them was missing a limb and wanted a prosthetic limb, right? And that is why they were so desperate to win this game show. And then other people were talking about like helping people in the community or like paying off their mum's mortgage and stuff like that, while other people just wanted the money for like their own career reasons, but not really motivated by like poverty or economic conditions. And I was saying to my girlfriend when we were watching this, it's just like kind of messed up that even in this show, you're lying to people and you're basically just manipulating people and destroying each other in pursuit of this money. And for certain people, there is a massive motivating factor in that this money will really, really change their lives because they are so desperate to have something fixed, like a prosthetic limb, for example. And it's quite ironic that the producers of this show are actually also the production company involved in the Squid Game show. So obviously, like over a year ago now, Mr. Beast made his own Squid Game like YouTube video, and I went back and watched my own coverage of it. And what's so funny about it is his whole video cost the same price as 2 episodes of Squid Game. That's so insane considering how bad it looked like at the end of the day. But obviously he was doing this for like, you know, clout, fame, money, and he couldn't even bring himself to say the creator's name, just like throwing it in at the end. And I said at the time, it's so American to take something that is specifically about capitalism and the Korean debt crisis and then make it into a stupid YouTube video where you just promote some rubbish mobile game, like what seems like a whole minute out of the very short runtime. A couple like months after I made that video, I thought maybe I was too harsh on it, but looking back now, I think I should have been harsher because it really is like one of the most stupid things ever. And of course, the creator of the Squid Game show, he actually liked the Mr. Beast thing. He liked the attention his whole show was getting. But I just want to kind of talk about like his motivations for creating the show before we start talking about like the in real life Squid Game, because I think there's some like little parallels with kind of like the brutality of like the capitalist system and like the kind of horrible conditions the people who participated in the real life Squid Game actually face. And I just think it's generally helpful to remember like what Squid Game is fundamentally, right? It's a show that is a commentary about the general global capitalist system, how unequal it is, and how like so many of us are forced to compete against each other, people just like us, for really a shot at money, for a shot at rising through the ranks. And in neoliberalism, we're forced to destroy ourselves and each other as individuals in pursuit of this wealth. And in some countries, it's celebrated more than others, like the United States. But in the context of Squid Game, it was just more about this elite really trapping people in these cycles of debt and enslaving them to the economic system. But there's an interview with The Guardian that Hwang Dong-yuk gave, the creator of Squid Game. I just want to read a couple quotes from it before we start talking about the in real life one. So when he talked about actually creating the Netflix show, he said, "It was physically, mentally, and emotionally draining. I kept having new ideas and revising the episodes as we were filming, so the amount of work multiplied." Talking about the motivation for Squid Game, I was very financially straitened because my mother retired from the company she was working for. There was a film I was working on, but we failed to get finances, so I couldn't work for about a year. We had to take out loans, my mother, myself, and my grandmother. Show is motivated by a very simple idea. We are fighting for our lives in very unequal circumstances. I do believe that the overall global economic order is unequal, and that around 90% of people believe that it's unfair. During the pandemic, poorer countries can't get their people vaxxed. They're contracting viruses on the street and even dying. So I did try to convey a message about modern capitalism. As I said, it's not profound. I wanted to create something that would resonate not just for the Korean people, but globally. This was my dream. We are all living in a Squid Game world. So obviously a game show where like people die and like maybe even kill each other isn't something unique to Squid Game. It's been done a lot. It's been done in popular media. Even Squid Game itself is inspired by like Japanese manga. But why I read those quotes is because obviously what Squid Game is meant to represent is people competing in the economic order. So then of course it's quite ironic when you actually make that into a real show. And like I was talking about with the traitors, you have about like 450 contestants in the Squid Game show. So there's so many different competing motivations of why people want this money. And like how many people would be motivated by some sort of like economic desperation or a desire to get out of like economic dire straits and stuff like that. And when the show actually comes out, how many people who feature will actually seem like they are characters from the real life show, right? I think it is like really, really tasteless. Like, are we actually going to watch a real life Squid Game where we're going to see multiple people and think, oh yeah, like, I really hope they win the money because they're in such bad financial straits and financial conditions, just like I wish like some characters in Squid Game win the money. It is like really insane. I know obviously like Netflix are responsible for Squid Game even getting financing, but I think it says so much about capitalism that you'll take something that is fundamentally like a massive critique of the capitalist system and then repackage it to make it like real, so people who get involved will be motivated by the same things that motivate the characters. This dystopian television show, like, I think it really does say so much about the culture at the moment, in that people make dystopian fiction and the first response to it that some people have, like Mr. Beast and Netflix, is, oh, that's a good idea, why don't I make my own one? So speaking of like Dong Wang-yuk, he also addressed the real life Squid Game, and this was like before this news came out. And he said he urged Squid Game fans not to take things too seriously, saying that he met with the creator of the reality spin-off. And this makes me laugh because it kind of becomes true. And he hopes they will be carrying on my vision and intention as much as possible for the show. Well, I guess that is happening, considering that they did treat the people in the Squid Game in real life actually really badly, like in the fake one. He addressed the concerns as well, so he said, I think that even though our show does carry quite a heavy message, and I know that there are some concerns of taking that message and creating it into a reality show with a cash prize, however, I feel like when you take things too seriously, that's not really the best way to go for the entertainment industry. It doesn't really set a great precedent. I would say that reproductions of such efforts are going to bring new meaning to the industry, and I hope this is going to be a great new direction for the industry overall. So I don't really find that like a ringing endorsement of the reality show. Like, he's obviously saying like he acknowledges the concerns, and then just like a bunch of waffle about how it might be good for the industry. I'd probably lean towards more like he's playing nice because Netflix funded his project and he wants to make more projects with Netflix. So he's not going to come out and say, yeah, this is disgusting and perverting my work. I really wish they wouldn't do this, but I kind of have to accept it because they helped make Squid Game in the first place. Of course, we don't know. Maybe he does think it's great. Maybe he does like it. But when you hear his reasons for, you know, creating the show in the first place, I kind of doubt that he thinks it's a great idea. And then, of course, him probably finding out that the conditions on set were actually pretty brutal probably doesn't make him like it anymore. So now let's start talking about the in real life Squid Game. I'm just going to read like the advertisement for people to join and like potentially get on the show before we dive into the Variety report about the conditions on the set. So on Netflix's site, do you want to play the Squid Game? Now you can. Season 2 isn't the only thing Squid Game is bringing its fans. The Korean series is coming to life in Squid Game The Challenge, the biggest reality competition series. All it needs is you. Exactly 456 players will compete to win the life-changing reward of $4.56 million, the largest cast and lump sum cash prize in reality TV history. Players will be put to the test in a series of games inspired by the show, along with some surprising new additions that will push them to their limits. Strategy, alliances, and character are crucial in order to survive the tension. The stakes are high, but thankfully in this game, the worst fate anyone will face is going home empty-handed. Well, we'll see about that when we start reading about the conditions. Even if you already have a green sweatsuit picked out to impress the front man, there are a few more obstacles, luckily not as difficult as sugar honeycombs, that stand in your way before the prize. Here's what you'll need to enter to compete in Squid Game The Challenge. You must be 21 or older, provide a 1-minute video that tells the casting crew about yourself, gives insight into your strategy, why it's vital for you to compete, and most importantly, what you would do with the jackpot. Please, no filters in your video. The front man wants to see how you'll really appear on camera. Upload a player headshot and full-length picture. Feel free to submit a few photos if you like, and if you're not one of the 456 players selected for Season 1, you can opt in for future outings of the show. So obviously we won't know until the show comes out, like how much they just took in, like your average Joe, or did they seek out people to hire, because that happens a lot of reality TV. Like the people who star in it aren't just like randomers off the street. And even like that Traitors show, which I was talking about, had like comedians and actors who weren't like really famous, but they were like known to an extent. We'll see if my theory comes true that there will be people in the real life show who resemble characters on the actual show. But now let's get into this variety report, and you guys are going to see how this real life Squid Game went so wrong. So it's really, really long, this whole article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I've tried to pick like the most important bits. I am going to be reading for a bit though. So inside Netflix's Squid Game reality show disaster, the conditions were absolutely inhumane. So I guess Netflix really trying to provide that authentic experience. Contestants such as John and two others who spoke to Variety, their real names have been changed in the story as they signed non-disclosure agreements, say they never signed up for the physical ordeal they went through. Contestants who weren't paid to participate in the series say they were told the actual game would take roughly 2 hours to play and shoot, but instead that turned into an almost 7-hour ordeal for some contenders. All of this was carried out in the unforgiving UK cold snap that saw temperatures drop to 0 degrees Celsius in Bedford on the day of filming. A number of contestants collapsed on the set, likely due to a combination of cold and fatigue from the 8 hours of prep time before the game even started. This is not a Bear Grylls survival show, says John. If they had told us it was going to be that cold, no one would have gone through with it. Another UK player, Marlene, says that what transpired is not as extreme as people are saying, but it's definitely not as minimal as is being conveyed by Netflix. It's not like we signed up for Survivor, but the conditions were absolutely inhumane and had nothing to do with the game. On day one of production, contestants received a hotel wake-up call as early as 3:30 a.m, with firm instructions not to interact with other players before they were driven in buses to Bedford's Cardington Studios, a former RAF hangar 2 hours drive north of London, where they were grouped off in tents and mic'd up. The Squid Game tracksuit they wore is exactly the one seen in the drama, hardly your go-to outfit to brave the elements. At this point, players were allowed to wear their coats on top, which producers had specifically asked them to pack for the show. They were also given hand and foot warmers and 2 pairs of thermal underwear and socks, which they could wear for the whole day. A few portable heaters purred in the tents, throwing off just enough heat for those standing nearby. As phones had been confiscated the day before, contestants couldn't be sure what time the game actually kicked off, but by most estimates it was 1 or 2 p.m, following a lunch break. There was some grumbling when it was revealed the challenge would take around 2 hours to complete, with poses to be held for 2 minutes at a time, but no one bought. Players had to provide a sign-off from their doctor in order to be cast on the show. This was Squid Game after all, it was going to be rigorous. So just to clarify, I think the first game they play is at red light, green light 1, the same one you saw in the Mr. Beast YouTube video. And here is where it starts getting bad. So as the game got underway, the atmosphere changed. Coats were taken away, hand and foot warmers were scooped out of pockets and plimsolls, and the players' jackets had to remain unzipped in order to display their numbers, as well as the fake blood that would squirt from the devices strapped to their chest if they were eliminated. When the show's giant killer doll stopped singing, they had to freeze in position. But what began as the promised 2-minute wait was quickly bumped up to 10 and then 15 minutes. Marlene says she counted a 26-minute wait during one round, and sources closer to the production say that the wait time allowed independent adjudicators to assess the gameplay. So Marlene saying, "The second time the song played, I saw in my left peripheral vision that this girl was swaying. Then she just buckled and you could hear her head actually hit the ground. And then someone came on the microphone and said to hold our positions because the game was not paused. After that, people were dropping like flies. Marlene estimates that around 4 people fainted, and Netflix has said about 3 people required medical attention. After medics were called for the 11th time, they started giving us relaxation breaks, they said. Don't move your feet, but if you want to bend your knees and move your arms around, you can." So I just want to stop on that part. Obviously, whoever is making this show is really incompetent that you think a game where people might have to stand still for ages and ages wearing just these flimsy jumpsuits is appropriate to be played in UK winter. Like, the UK can get really, really cold in winter. And if this is at like an old RAF hangar, I assume it's like more out the way. It's not near like loads and loads of buildings. So it's probably way, way colder. And the fact that they're telling people like, don't move as people fall around you and smash their head on the floor. Don't move, stay in your place because we have to film this. We have to get it all. And again, plays so nicely into the themes of Squid Game. You know, why aren't they treating these people appropriately? They're trying to monetize this game show. They're trying to do it in pursuit of profit. So they don't want to stop for a day. They don't want to stop to make people receive medical attention or maybe warmth and stuff, because time is money in television production. You don't want to stop for the whole day because it might cost, like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of pounds. So better yet, just let people stand still in the freezing cold while all the other contestants like fall over because they're so freezing. So moving on, Jenny, a player from outside the UK who had been flown in for the game, told Variety, "I'm infuriated by the narrative that Netflix is putting out there, that only a few people were injured. We were all injured just by going through that experience." Really authentic to Squid Game, this is. "Take some responsibility for the fact that you were ill prepared for this kind of thing with this number of people. There were some things I guess producers didn't think about, but when they saw the weather was going to be that way, they should have made adjustments." John says he experienced dizziness and a banging headache while playing the game. "This game was no longer fun or respectable to those of a certain age. It went beyond being a game, but I thought, you know what, it's 4.5 million, I can do this," until he couldn't. Imagine you're playing red light, green light for 6 hours. What game is that? This isn't a game. The fun is now gone. You can't tell people they have to stand in below freezing temperatures in just a tracksuit and 2 pairs of socks. Come on. All 3 players say they returned to the hotel between 7 p.m. and midnight without having dinner. Dinner orders had been taken at lunch, but because the games had run longer than expected, contestants were transported back to their central London hotel without having eaten. Production had ordered pizzas for those arriving, but there wasn't enough food to go round, and some people went to bed hungry. In the morning, I woke up and there was a cold hamburger from McDonald's and a side salad in front of my door that had been there for God knows how long, says Marlene. Jenny, who is still shaken, managed to have a brief conversation with a production assistant who apologized and said they had required far more staff than they had. Sources close to the show deny that it was under-resourced. Variety has confirmed that the producers contacted each of the players in the last week to ask if they had arrived home safely, but he didn't ask me how I was doing or anything, says Jenny. It seemed off to me because during the casting process, he was so nice. So Variety also talked to a TV executive who was anonymous as well. And they just said, it's totally incumbent on the production company to cancel a shoot in adverse conditions. And I've had those conversations. Someone calls and goes, we've got a problem and you've just got to suck it up and it's going to cost you £250,000 to £500,000. But the line was always, we're a big company, we can do that, and certainly Netflix can. So it just ends on Jenny giving one more quote, saying the application process was unlike anything I've ever done. The background checks, psychological checks, they were emailing, calling or texting me every day from October to January. The people I communicated with at Studio Lambert were kind and supportive. I was thinking, this is going to be a great experience. These are great folks. But once the game started, I said, what happened to these people? What happened to them caring about us? I'd hate to break it to Jenny, but these people like probably never cared about you because at the end of the day, they're making like this game show with the biggest prize in reality TV history, and they're not going to be your best friends. They're not choosing you because they want you to have a great time and maybe win the money. They've chosen you because you fit into their cast of characters. Like I read the description at the start, they're obviously being picky and they obviously chose these people for certain reasons, maybe because of their background, maybe because of their personality, maybe because of their looks, maybe because of all 3. That's why they chose you, and they want to use you and make you compete against everyone else for this cash prize because it makes good TV. And that's the reason why they wouldn't stop the shoot when people were falling over and cracking their skulls on the floor because of below freezing temperatures when you were all wearing these little flimsy tracksuits. And although I wouldn't say that in real life Squid Game so far is like the biggest indictment ever of like modern capitalism, I do think it's pretty clear that the reason more wasn't done to accommodate the contestants was just basically to save money at the end of the day. And if you're trying to save money and cut costs when you're making something this big and expensive, probably just because you want a bigger return on your investment. And even though you're investing a lot, you're trying to invest as little as possible. And to do that, they basically didn't want to provide these people with, you know, the basic comfort of, I don't know, food and being kind of warm in like the freezing British winter. And it's pretty clear the show just isn't off to a good start. Like, we're getting reports like this from a couple people. Who knows what we'll hear about later on. And then of course we haven't even seen the show yet, and I'm predicting now there's going to be even more like discourse around it, because there's going to be people in the show who tell the camera they want the money for a certain reason, because obviously there's going to be lots of people who want it maybe for luxuries and stuff like that, but there's going to be people with sob stories, there's going to be people with like terrible backgrounds, there's going to be really, really poor people, and they're going to come to the show and brave these pretty terrible conditions because they want to win so badly. And like I was saying at the start, there is like this horrible capitalist element of just contemporary game shows anyway. But then of course it's even more hilarious and just ironic when you take something that was used in the game show format to criticize and kind of even satirize the economic system. You take that, make your own one, and while making that, you treat people like you're the bad guys in the actual show. But anyway, that is it for the video. Just like a shorter one today for my first one in Cambodia. Let me know how it sounds. Let me know how it looks. I always get like really stressed and self-conscious about like switching sets every month. Although I'm really enjoying traveling, it will be nice to go back to England and just not have to worry about loads of things I can't control. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.